Good evening. It's wonderful to be here again. I was here in June of 2007. How many people were here at that time? Yeah, well, it's good to see that some of you want to come back. When I did talk about Parkland Institute and what it was. I don't think I'm going to talk about that tonight. If anybody wants to bring it up and question and answer, that's fine. I want to get right into it. First, though, I'd like to introduce John Dillon. Could you stand up there? John Dillon was co-author of this report. I'm going to be talking about this. He and I wrote a report called Over a Barrel, like exiting from NAFTA's proportionality clause. John is with Kairos and really good researcher on energy for 2.5, 3 decades.
About that.
Yes, I want to focus on Canada developing an energy security plan, and I want to talk about the framing of that and how important it is to frame it as energy security, which I think can bring together peak oil, climate change, and I think the neglected side of all of this, which is energy security for Canadians. I feel very much at home in this crowd, but don't tell anybody in Alberta that. It might ruin my reputation to be seen as cavorting too closely with Torontonians. Although I'm not religious, after waking each morning, I thank God that Alberta is still part of Canada. Can you imagine what it would be like if it wasn't? Actually, the raw anger that spawned the wild popularity of the early 1980s bumper sticker at the time of the National Energy Program, I don't know if you remember that one, "Let the Eastern bastards freeze in the dark." How many people remember that bumper sticker? Well, I think that feeling is largely dissipated for the moment. I mean, it could come back. But that bumper sticker, though, inspired me. I got the title of my book from it, Freezing in the Dark, Why Canada Needs an Energy Security Plan. Of course, it's a very scary image for Canadians, the idea of freezing in the dark. All of us can relate to that idea, living through long stormy winter nights. And it's, of course, one of my worst motivators, one of my worst nightmares and a motivator for me to get an energy security plan for Canada. So in fact, Canadians do not experience freezing or even shivering in the dark. Well, the world is about to undergo a series of international oil supply shocks over the next decade. No one is sure, of course, when the first one will strike, but it will be soon. When it does, countries which lack one of the following alternatives will have the severest crisis. First, long-term oil supply contracts. Secondly, the military might to requisition other countries' oil. Third, prioritizing their own citizens' needs above those of oil exports. Or fourth, having strategic petroleum reserves. Well, despite its plentiful oil, Canada is in the severe crisis camp because it lacks all 4 of those criteria. The demand for oil is rapidly rising, while, of course, supplies are increasingly tight. This means that the future oil supply crisis will be more frequent, longer lasting, and more devastating. And of course, there are lots of scenarios for the cause of the next oil supply shock. The study called Oil Shockwave, which is a study developed in 2005 by the U.S. National Commission on Energy Policy, looked at several such scenarios. Escalating violence in Nigeria, explosions at a natural gas processing plant in Saudi Arabia, an attack on the oil port of Valdez, Alaska, and these were all hypotheticals. Since then, there have been 3 reported attempts to target Saudi oil facilities in 2006, 2007. One unsuccessful but a concerted al-Qaeda attack was directed against Abqaiq, which is in Saudi Arabia, which processes almost 8% of the world's oil. We just saw Algeria, just yesterday, there was the killing of 12 workers for SNC-Lavalin, a Quebec company, and it shows us that there is a civil war going on in Algeria. Canada gets 20% of its imports from Algeria. It's not a very secure source. Well, I hope that none of these things happen, but it could be too late to protect Canadians, Eastern Canadians, from their first taste of shivering in the dark. I'm certainly not an expert on Middle Eastern politics, but I hear persistent rumors that Israel may bomb Iran shortly after the U.S. presidential election in early November. May do it in November or December, and do it while Bush is still there as a lame duck president. If Israel bombs Iran, of course Iran will attempt to retaliate by, amongst other things, trying to block the Strait of Hormuz, which is 34 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. Now that doesn't sound all that narrow, but the traffic lane is only 10 kilometers wide. It includes 2 3-kilometer wide traffic lanes, one inbound and one outbound, and then there's a separation median of 3 kilometers. So it's actually, the actual lanes are very narrow. It is the world's most strategically important choke point. According to the United States Energy Information Agency, 40% of all seaborne traded oil, or 20% of all oil traded in the world, passes through the Strait of Hormuz daily. In the first half of 2008, that was about 17 million barrels of oil. Well, if you're looking at it from the Canadian point of view, here we have all this oil in Western Canada, but we import almost 1 million barrels a day, 850,000 barrels a day to Eastern Canada. And that